feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it's sink or swim, only option is to win.
Hey everyone, welcome to the post-show wrap-up of The Shrimp Tank. I'm your host, Rich Jensen, along with my co-host, David Sims, and our special guest today, Chris Coleman of Safe Foods, President and CEO. Every week on the post-show wrap-up, we try to bring you the highlights of the questions and the answers and the insights we picked up during the entire podcast, which you can listen to at arkansas.shrimptankpodcast.com or download it on iTunes. Hey, we just completed a great interview, and I wanted to touch on a few things. I have to put my glasses on here for this, but Safe Foods started 18 years ago, went from zero to $55 million in revenue. 600 million servings a day of food that you guys impact, your product has made safe for folks to eat, and a 35% compound annual growth rate. So I would say that's a high-end CEO, and even though you've only been in the role for a while. So. Yeah. So one of the things that I think was a big highlight as we sat and talked with Chris was when we talked about vision. And you talked about basically becoming a steward of a living strategy. Can you expound a little more on that?
Yeah, so let's talk about that just for a second. So when you let's break that down, steward of living strategy. So my role is to manage the company and to manage where it's going in the future. Mm-hmm. And those of us out there in business know that one thing that we know we can predict is financial forecast. We can predict that those financial forecasts will not be exactly what we forecast.
There for a second.
Right? So
like we can predict pro formas are wrong.
So in terms
they're
of
acceptable lies, right? Pro formas?
Exactly. In terms of stewardship in this role of managing the time, the money, and the people, and specifically the strategy, it's my job to understand, okay, what does that future look like, and then communicate it to our team that actually goes out and executes the plan. Yeah. The important word in this statement is living. Mm-hmm. We know it's not going to be exactly what we project it to be. Right. So I've constantly got to stay on top of what's happening in terms of our overall strategy and what do we need to adjust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good. And you also said on the podcast another thing that was really good that the listeners you should tune in and hear this. You talked about the two dimensions, steward of who we are and who we're to become. And when we asked you the question about how to develop a vision, you shared some really, really good advice there. So talk about that.
So I did, huh? So
yeah.
See if you can
remember what it was.
I think it was about exploring.
You viewed it as an opportunity to explore.
If you haven't read the book Blue Ocean Strategy, I think that's the name of the book. It's a great book to read, but it talks about going to where others haven't been and aren't planning to go and how to see that space. Right. Blue Ocean is where the sharks don't exist, right? The water is clear, clean. There's lots of opportunity in that market space and how to get there. And so in terms of establishing that vision, you have to paint that picture that's attractive to the team that says this is where we need to go and this is how we need to get there to achieve that objective.
And I think the thing you said that I really liked is he says we got to figure out how to get there first.
Right.
So that's right.
Yeah. It was an opportunity to explore what's going on and then how to get there first. It was really great. Another great thing you said on the podcast that, again, our listeners really should tune in and listen to it is this mentality that you've cultivated as a leader. And that really is embedded from the get-go with Safe Foods, and that is we can solve this. And it was in response to a question I asked you about this book that I'm reading by Cheryl Bachelder, Dare to Serve as a Leader, where she said, your attitude will determine the altitude of your performance results. Talk a little bit more about that must-have attitude.
As we were discussing, that really gets down to what is your culture makeup and how do you protect what you want that culture to be. And that's what leads into those of us that have the responsibility at leading the organization must have the same beliefs, convictions, structure of having that strong attitude of we can do, so that everyone else will have that same attitude.
We can solve this problem. And the particular unique aspect of your business, you guys have to solve problems. Food
We're
safety.
Problem solvers.
Engineers.
I'm not here to sell you anything.
PhDs
I'm here to solve.
Technicians, yeah. That's really great.
Well, I encourage you to go ahead to arkansas.shrimptankpodcast.com. listen to the full podcast. It's a lot of great information there. You don't often get to sit down and just kind of get inside the head of a CEO of a major corporation like this. Chris, just one of the things he did mention was they are looking to hire some people in the near future. So people might want to know how best to get a hold of you. I think it was safefoods.net.
The best way to find us is through safefoods.net, and we will post opportunities there in terms of becoming a part of the Safe Foods team, and we would love to have you go in if you're interested and look at those opportunities to see where you might fit within our
What
team.
if an executive or somebody who wants to pick your brain about leading the company? How would they best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is through email. And my email address is chris.coleman@safefoods.net. And I'm sure these guys can help get it to you as well. chris.coleman@safefoods.net.
Yeah.
And I'd love to connect with you and share ideas and learn more.
That's great.
Well, again, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really, really enjoyed it. Again, I encourage everyone, go and listen to the full podcast. And remember, until next week, to become a shark, we all start out as shrimp.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank.